Good morning, Amy Jacobson here, in for Dan Proft is John Anthony.
Good morning.
Yeah, I already got a text message from Sean from Elmwood Park.
Uh-oh.
Calling me out because I said Lenny and Squeaky, and it's Squiggy.
Squiggy.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, he would know,
David
too.
Lander.
He would know.
Yeah, so excuse me, I had a blonde moment. Is that okay? Can I make a mistake? Well, a week from today, the vaccine comes out. If all goes well, on December 10th, and the vaccine should be here beginning December 13th. And it's broken down in distribution. So this is how it's going to be rolled out. Here's Governor Pritzker.
The very first vaccinations will be dedicated to hospitals and healthcare workers in the 50 counties with the highest death rates per capita. And in just a moment, Dr. Ezike will dive into the details of that distribution model and how we're assisting local health departments across the state through this process. Some quick math will tell you that it's going to take multiple weeks of distribution to even get our healthcare workers their first of the 2 doses that they require, while also getting to the long-term care facility residents. But remember, nationally, those 2 groups equal about 24 million people.
And we're going to invite our next guest on, but take calls later on about if you would get the vaccine. There's one lawmaker wants to pay everybody $1,500 to take the vaccine. So for more than that and COVID, all things COVID, let's welcome to the program Dr. Chad Savage, founder of YourChoice Direct Care and policy advisor for the Heartland Institute. His latest column, The Pandemic, shows why socialism always fails. Good morning, doctor. How are you?
Good morning, Amy. Good morning, John.
Hey, good morning.
Good. So I want to start here. Would you take the vaccine if it's offered? And are you going to be forced to take the vaccine if you work, obviously in a hospital setting?
Yeah, two interesting questions. Actually, we were just debating that, a number of doctors and myself this weekend online about the merits and whether we personally would do it or not. I personally very, very likely will. I'm getting a little older myself. I'm, not quite 50 yet, but I'm getting there. So that starts to put me into a higher risk range. And for my parents who, God bless them, are still alive, I absolutely am going to recommend it to them. My children may be a different situation, and currently they're not actually recommended for age under 18. So to blanket say everyone should get it is actually not fitting with the recommendation even of the manufacturer at this point in time. But assuming that the Pfizer one, which will be the first one available, the hearing I believe is on the 10th. They're expecting within 2 days of a positive review that they'll start actually administering the vaccine. So really within the next week, we may start having a vaccine for COVID, which is pretty exciting. And then Moderna should be following that approximately a week later. There will be a limited supply. So they're going to go out appropriately to the highest risk people to begin with.
Now, I have a friend whose grandmother, has dementia, severe dementia. And she's upset. She said, why would they waste a vaccine on her? And she loves her very much. But she said she's on the driveway home. So is that, it sounded like that's the plan, the healthcare workers and those in long-term care facilities.
Yeah. So, it's a complex question. Exactly. Those are also the people that are most likely to die from it. And that's why compulsion should probably not be part of this. It should be voluntary, mainly when there's a limited supply. If there's someone who says, listen, if I get it and if that claims me, I'm okay with that. Because I have months to live, I'm in hospice, something of that sort. They probably wouldn't give it to hospice patients anyway. No. That's probably someone who should be passed over for it if they voluntarily don't want it and given to somebody who is also high risk but desires it. Mainly, though we expect that this is going to be quite a safe vaccine, there's still unknowns. And in case there were unexpected complications down the line, if you volunteered for it, it's more acceptable if you went into something eyes wide open than if you were brought to it kicking and screaming and then suffer a consequence.
Right. Dr. Savage, I look at how you hear the conversations and you hear these people saying that it may be mandated and all that. Okay, I get it. But why don't they focus also on the therapeutic side of the treatment options for those people who don't want to take the vaccine? Because I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to take the vaccine. I've never taken a flu shot. I've never taken a flu shot ever.
You've got to take the vaccine.
I'm not interested in the government pumping anything in my body. Not that I'm a conspiracy theorist or anything like that. I just
Are you afraid they're going to tag you? Because that's what I hear from people.
Well, I've been hearing the GP. I mean, changing your DNA and all that. I don't believe in all that, but I just never would allow anybody to pump something in me to protect me from it when I can just get it and develop the antibodies from it. I guess that's my perspective. But what about the therapeutic side of it?
Well, just actually to touch on something that you and Amy were just going back and forth on a little bit there can be a valid argument for both approaches. I mean, for getting it and not getting it. I mentioned children just in passing, but it has actually not been tested on children as of yet. The only one that even kind of broached that topic was Pfizer, and their study on 12-year-olds and up is actually ongoing right now. We don't have complete data on that, so we don't know that. It's extremely unlikely that there's going to be a major problem in that age group. But right now, that is unclear. This is a brand new technology, right. And so if you're going to give a therapeutic or a vaccination, and it may have a side effect. Right now, we know that there's some side effects just from fever, chills, achiness, tenderness at the site of the injection, but we don't know of any major long-term side effects from this drug. Vaccination. But again, that's unknown. About 10% of therapeutics that are brought to the market are get a new warning label applied to them at the end of their first year, because in the preclinical trials, before they're launched to the market, they find common problems, but rare things may slip through the cracks and become apparent when you start administering vaccines or therapeutics to millions of people. So again, we should not use it in groups that there's unknown. And if you have a high risk of death or serious complication from COVID, your tolerance to side effects is higher because of the higher perceived benefit. Whereas if your benefit is low, and right now children are very, very unlikely to die from COVID, so you better have a darn clean therapeutic or vaccine in that age range to justify the mitigating the very, very tiny risk that they start with.
Does that age group even need it?
Well, that's kind of the debate, right? I mean, if you look at them alone, their risk of death from contracting COVID is you have 99.994% survival, which equates to about the same chance of dying from COVID if you contract it, not even if you don't. But if you contract COVID and you are under 18, your chance of death is about the same as being struck by lightning in your life. And that's not me saying that as a grandiose statement. It's actually you have about a 1 in 15,000 chance of being struck by lightning in the course of your life, and you have about a 1 in 15,000 chance of dying from COVID if you're under 18 and you contract it. And the death rate from COVID in the United States right now amongst that age population is actually similar to the number that die from bicycle accidents.
Yeah.
So, we don't vaccine, we don't do, that would argue against specifically for their benefit a vaccine for them. The reason to potentially vaccinate them, assuming it is safe, is actually for the protection of we older people.
Yeah. Hey, Dr. Savage, I particularly loved your article, This Pandemic Shows Why Socialism Always Fails. I have a theory on that. I really believe that our educational system has been like priming the pump throughout our states. Getting people comfortable with socialism. I particularly liked how towards the end where you actually brought in how the people of Israel wanted a king, and God said, okay, I'll give you a king. And we see what has happened throughout the world because of that one act, if you believe in the Bible. But why does socialism fail? And why do people really have to come to an understanding about how all of this with COVID and everything, of why the dangers of socialism?
Well, again, it's a great point. For socialism to work, people would have to be angels, and the government and the people running the government themselves would have to be angels. And my point of that op-ed, which actually it's interesting you guys referenced, I wrote that one near the beginning of the pandemic because it was very clear that the powers that be were not adhering to the same restrictions that they were placing upon the rest of us at that time.
Still not.
Chris Cuomo, the CNN anchor, actively had COVID and was known to be out and about, several towns over looking at a house he was building with no mask, and actually got in an argument with a bicyclist. So
that
he was yelling
best.
at him. And
we played that audio here, and it was one of the best moments in the show.
Yeah, and your own mayor, Lori Lightfoot at that time was out getting her hair cut. And the interesting thing, I tried to draw attention to that because, they want sacrifices from everyone else but themselves. And I actually thought and hoped, maybe wrongly, definitely wrongly, that by bringing the public light onto the hypocrisy of some of our rulers, if you will, and normally I wouldn't say the United States, but it's becoming more and more so where they're taking the role of rulers instead of simply elected officials, that they would be shamed out of doing it. However, that hasn't happened. I mean, if you even look at Lori Lightfoot, she did that originally with her haircut. She got a haircut while telling everyone else not to get a haircut, and she used a number of excuses as to why that was.
Well, she's the face of Chicago. That's what she said. She's got and so does her wife. Her wife, Amy, I know they opened up a salon. I won't say which one. Because she was the wife of the face of Chicago.
Yeah, so there's many reasons why they can argue it, but then no matter what your justification is, and it may be better than hers even, it doesn't matter because they only see their own vested interest. Well, you think that after kind of being publicly shamed as she was for that, which she didn't seem to have any remorse for it, that she wouldn't do it again, and yet after Biden was potentially voted in here, I guess we'll see, but she was then went out into the middle of a crowd with no mask, was yelling into a bullhorn. So again, violating her own edicts. And
Governor Pritzker had he sat down. He was in a room with somebody who had COVID. He should have been, self-quarantined, and he put on a mask and went out and celebrated too. And then they changed the rules, said, well, no, because he tested negative, but you can't test out of quarantine, as we've been told, but yet he did.
And it's interesting, I know I've been talking a lot about children, but if you're a parent, I tell parents, because I'm an internist, I primarily see adults, I tell the parents that I see, wear a helmet when you're riding a bicycle. It's not a real high chance that you're going to die in a bicycle accident, but because it sets a great example for your children, and children recognize hypocrisy from a million miles away are unlikely to do what you're telling them to do if you yourself won't do it. Well, that applies for the rest of us, too. Yeah. When we have our leaders telling us to do one thing and then flagrantly violating it themselves, it's harder. Even if you truly believe they're going to work, you're less likely to comply if you see that massive hypocrisy.
Gosh, all right. Well, we're going to have to leave it there. Dr. Chad Savage, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Thanks, founder of YourChoice Direct Care and policy advisor for the Heartland Institute, and he joined us on our turnkey Pro answer line.
It's what Chicago is talking about. It's Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560. The Answer.
I'm Dan Proft.
And I'm Amy Jacobson. And if you're a small business owner or you make the marketing or advertising decisions for a business, then listen up. Once again, our annual Food for the Poor campaign is underway to raise money to feed families in Latin America who are suffering because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our friends at Food for the Poor are working with partners on the ground at feeding centers to provide emergency food relief. And here's how your business can be part of the solution.
Become a Food for the Poor business benefactor. Just make a $2,500 tax-deductible donation to Food for the Poor, and AM 560 will give you 40 60-second commercials to air here on AM 560 The Answer between 5 a.m. and 8 p.m. Monday to Friday at no additional cost to you.
To take advantage of this deal, just call Anjanette Natowski, 847-472-8951. Again, that's 847-472-8951, or go to 560theanswer.com/food for the poor.
Fall is the season when structural problems can start in your home. If you're noticing new cracks in your walls or brickwork, sinking ground or concrete, sagging floors, gaps under baseboards, sticking doors or windows, these are all symptoms of structural foundation problems. All too often, homeowners ignore these signs and then experience even bigger problems later on. A stitch in time saves 9. Hi, I'm Roy Spencer with Permaseal. You can rely on an honest, accurate evaluation from Permaseal's trained experts. For over 41 years, Permaseal has been Chicagoland's and Northwest Indiana's most trusted contractor for basement and foundation repairs. We've earned our A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. For a free, thorough inspection, call Permaseal at 800-421-SEAL. That's 800-421-7325, or visit permaseal.net.
Known best for being better, Permaseal.
If you're drowning in IRS debt and can't afford to pay, then you need to take advantage of special IRS tax programs that are available and free yourself from IRS collection efforts once and for all. Due to the